This video is going to illustrate the scalpel blade holder that I've designed to replace the can opener or other internal tools or smaller tools on the Leatherman ARC or Free P2 / Free P4. So this holder accepts number 3 size blades, which is smaller than like the Havilon blades, for example. I have right now installed a number 11 blade, which fits on a number 3 handle. But the other common size is the number 10 here. But they come in all different shapes and somewhat different sizes, but most of them are going to be around like X-Acto blade size. And this is going to be probably the most common one, number 10 and this number 11 here. So I've got it installed right here in place of the can opener. And you can see I've shifted the bit driver and the guard over towards the blade so that I can fit the scalpel holder in between the guard for the bit holder, that little bracket or shield, whatever, retainer clip, between that and the spring. So basically it's between the bit driver and the saw. And when it's closed, it fits down nicely, kind of tucks in right up there underneath the side of the plier head. So you can't get your finger in there and cut yourself on it or anything like that. And when it's in plier mode, it's still pretty protected. Like you can't really get in there from this side unless you've got really small fingers. And then it's slightly exposed in here, but then, you know, you're not, when you're using the pliers, you're not sticking your fingers down inside the handles. And even then, it's going to be kind of difficult to hook yourself on that. So it's pretty safe as far as when it's stored. As far as deploying it and getting it out, there's a couple different methods to do it. I've made it kind of a fail-safe, like these other middle tools, you know, they're just stuck in with the magnets until they reach about 45 degrees when the cam, the little lobe, the curved part on the back of the tool component, this part here, that engages the spring at about 45 degrees. So the easiest way to get it out for the scalpel blade holder, since that is engaged already, similar to the larger tools, like you can see that this engages the spring as soon as you start to lift it, whereas the bit driver doesn't engage it until it reaches there. The scalpel holder is like the main tools in that it's engaged with that spring right away, even when it's closed. So the easiest way to get it out, you can just dig your fingernail under there and hook that nail nick and pull it out, and that's easy enough. In the future, I may start raising this nail hook and that little nail groove up above the bit driver, basically just raise it up that way a little bit to give it a little slightly better accessibility without having to do anything else. But as it is, I think the easiest way to get it out is to open up the bit driver to about, say, 90 degrees or more, 130 degrees, and then you can easily lift this out and open it, close the bit driver, and get this the rest of the way out. And you can see it engages that lock very securely, and also the blade is really secure on there. There's no wiggle on the blade. Each of these is hand worked by me on my jeweler's bench to make sure that the blades have pretty smooth installation, action, and removability. So to remove it, you lift this back part here, and you can just grab the blade and pull it off. I recommend grabbing it with pliers until you get really comfortable with doing that. So lift this here, grab the blade here with pliers, and pull it off like that. And then installation is the same in reverse, except you don't have to lift it. But yeah, the safest way is going to be to grab this with pliers, but you should be able to do it by hand. And again, that's very secure and stable on there. There's not any wiggling around on that key. when it closes, this steel it's stainless steel and it is magnetic, although not quite as magnetic as the 420 series that Leatherman uses. But regardless, the main thing that holds that shut and the main thing that closes it is its engagement with the spring. So this could be made out of any material in theory, and it would still snap shut and be really strong and secure in there. The reason I've set it up like that with the cam mechanism is because when you push to open these other tools, or the bit driver or the can opener, you push this part here and then they pop up, and they usually hit you in the hand, and the scalpel is quite a bit longer. You can push that to get it to pop up a little bit, enough to be able to grab it by that little nail groove. But you can see if that were to just pop up when you push it, that's going to stab you in the hand, and that'd be a bad day. So I've incorporated that kind of fail-safe basically to make it a two-stage process. The scalpel is probably not something you're going to be using constantly, but even if you are, it's better to have an extra step in removing it or getting it out in order to make it safer for you. So the scalpel blade holders are 2 millimeters thick. The can openers are about 1.9 millimeters thick, and the micro eyeglass screwdriver is also 2 millimeters thick. So you could replace the micro eyeglass screwdriver with it. Actually, let me double check that. Yeah, I was wrong about that. The eyeglass screwdriver is 2 millimeters thick out here at the end, a little bit more, but back here at the base it's 2.5. So you could swap it out with this, and you just need some extra shims to space it out a little bit, or you could install it in place of the can opener, which is my preference, in which case it is 0.1 millimeters approximately thicker than the can opener, which is going to push this scale out just a little bit, and also push the the frame out and the saw out by just 0.1 millimeters, which is, the thickness of a piece of paper. I found when I did that my saw would catch on my frame right there just slightly when I'd close it. And that could just be because of how I had my pivots adjusted. I've heard of them being like that from the factory, but regardless, an easy fix for it, which I include with my blades, is just to put a thin shim. So I've got some 0.3 millimeter thick shims, and I've just installed it right in there on the plier head side of the pivot between the plier head assembly and the frame. And that just moves the frame out just a little bit so that the saw blade has plenty of clearance. If you've never taken these apart before, or even if you have, one thing to keep in mind is that the pivot barrel, right now there's a barrel that goes through everything, and then there's a little screw that engages the barrel. I may have mine flipped around, but regardless, the barrel goes through, and it needs to engage this second frame and fit inside of it. Now, it doesn't stick out very far past the washer that's on this side of the blade, on the frame side of the blade. It only sticks out by about 0.2 or 0.3 millimeters. And so you really need to make sure that you push that pivot barrel all the way through while you're assembling everything, and pinch it tight while you push it in, so that you can make sure that that pivot barrel sits down inside this frame and isn't just pushing down up against the back of it. Because if it's pushing down up against the back of it, an easy way to tell is when you open your tools, specifically like one of the main tools, like the saw is my tester that I like to use. It will have some movement in it, and you'll actually see that the pivot screw is moving a little bit. So I recommend, assembling it and then snugging that down, but not making it too tight while you check and see and make sure that you're not having any up and down lock, what's called lock rock typically, of the saw blade or any of the other tools. Because they should all lock in securely, including the scalpel blade. While I was test fitting some of these, I put one in and I was noticing kind of an excessive amount of movement in it, and I thought it was an issue with that particular holder, until I realized that the other tools were having that issue as well. And one of the things that can happen if you do wind up, not fitting that pivot barrel all the way into the second frame, is that when you go to tighten it down and reduce any slop or play, which is difficult to do because it's not really clamping because that frame is in the way, you can wind up smashing the end of that pivot barrel and kind of mushrooming it, making it difficult to fit some of your parts onto that pivot. So the scalpel blade holders, I machine all of these by hand after I get them 3D printed to make sure everything fits. And one of the steps is drilling out the pivots, because I get them made too small so that I can size them up to the correct size and be the right tolerance. So they're a very snug fit, probably a tighter fit over the pivot than the Leatherman tools, these other components are. And so if you wind up mushrooming that end of the pivot barrel, you'll have a difficult time fitting it into the frame on the next time you go to assemble it, because it'll be a larger diameter, but you'll also have a difficult time fitting it through some of the tighter fitting pivot holes in the tools. I think that's about it. I think I've covered everything. These are available through my website. I include a set of a couple of shims as well as some blades along with these to get you started. These are designed specifically for P&P blades, are the ones that I like to use just for consistency. And I recommend that if you buy my holders, you use those blades as well, unless you find something else that fits and works how you like it. But all blades are a slightly different fit. Some are going to be a little bit tighter or a little bit looser possibly, because the keyholes are all slightly unique in terms of it can be like 0.1 millimeter difference, but that can have an impact. And I do make these so that they will lock securely even if the keyholes are slightly longer or slightly shorter, by kind of a sloped ramp back there. So if it's a shorter blade, a shorter keyhole, it will engage more with the back of the blade sticking up like this. And if the keyhole is longer, it will sit down deeper. It's probably hard to see in this video, but it'll sit down deeper this way. But since the back edge of this oval cylindrical key, whatever you want to call it, is angled about like that, it will engage the blade at some point depending on how long the keyhole is inside the blade. But like I said, they're all slightly different. I do test these with a number of different brands of blades, but again, the ones that I recommend are P&P brand, and they're like $10 for 100 of them or something like that on Amazon. And again, you can get them in a variety of sizes. Since there's so much space in this handle, a lot of different blade shapes will fit, unlike on my blade holders for the Wave and Charge and Surge and other Leatherman tools, which have kind of more limited amount of space. There's plenty of clearance in there for whatever blade shape, as long as it will fit a number 3 handle, and I think there's like 12 different styles. But the most common ones, again, are number 11, number 10, and this is the blade holder that I ship out. All right, thanks for watching.